matter if we can beat out another country in athletics? I understand that it's a rule replacement and all, but it just seems as if we want to be the best at everything, even though Kenya is always going to come out on top when it comes to running marathons. So there's no point in even trying. Wow, cockiness in athletic events? That's just unheard of. The only thing the Olympics promotes is our desire to go to war with multiple countries at the same time. Think about it, javelin throwing and archery shooting? All you have to do is replace the targets with innocent bystanders and start saying they provoked the athletes, so they had to go, and you'll have the kind of war we've become so accustomed to. The Olympics just seems like a major form of denial, because adults try their best to relive their glory days, even though they should get on with their lives because they're 32 years old. Why would you want to watch a bunch of people do something successful while saying to yourself, I could never do that, so you can never lie down on your back and let gravity push your sled down an ice chute? I bet you could do that because it takes no athletic ability whatsoever, just hand-eye coordination and motor skills. Just like NASCAR, people just sweat because they're in a small space wearing jumpsuits. I've never seen Iraq or Iran in these games either. Why don't we just settle our disputes by doing one of these dumb activities like a gymnastics competition followed by a kindergarten lesson on how to get along with other people? I think they should just use uncoordinated people in these Olympics. Then there will be way more injuries and humorous mess-ups or mistakes, which adds actual entertainment to the Olympics. People watch NASCAR for the crashes, why shouldn't the Olympics be the same? But the Olympics is just a combination of parents demanding their kids to be good at something and trying to beat out other countries by defeating them in a sporting event. Oh no, you beat them in a non-dangerous sport. You really showed them who's boss. Now you can apologize by organizing a tea party and saying you're sorry for making them cry. That's another thing. The Olympics has a great deal of crying in it, whether the person is really sad they lost or they're overjoyed with happiness. Big deal, you tripped over a hurdle. You really let your country down. But don't get too depressed, America. We may not be the best at every sport, but we'll always have the most obese people, the most crime, the most people in jail, and the highest amount of people on antidepressants. So take that, rest of the world, and that's what really burns my biscuits. I'm Anchorman Dave, and this is my co-anchor,
Louis V.
And this is Faux News.
Corn doesn't seem to be doing very well. I guess Marshtown's gonna have some trouble.
The current Marshalltown attendance rates seem to be rising at the same speed as my 86-year-old grandma when she forgets her walk.
Experts say the end of the world is tomorrow. It's been a good run.
How will the world end, you say? Tomato soup, that is all. Breaking news! Tomato soup has been linked to every form of cancer.
Then next Thursday, Marshtown will experience its first volcanic eruption.
It's been reported that Taylor Swift has been shunned after waving at a fan at her last concert. Sources say she will come out with a new album next Tuesday. Temporary blindness was on the increase during the last Twilight movie. Whether it was due to the sparkly vampires or the true absurdity of the film, I do not know because I was smart and did not attend. 92% of adolescent couples broke up this weekend. Said one man, quote, "No matter how hard she wishes, I will never be a sparkly vampire." And young men all over the country have been fed up with their girlfriends' obsessions over mythical creatures. And on a personal note, it's about time. So I went on a college visit a few weeks ago to Columbia College in Chicago. And while they were doing their opening presentations, I had a lot of thoughts and I thought I'd share them with you. So take a look at this dramatic reenactment. That's mean. Why didn't they give the sign language translators a microphone? What thoughts go through dance majors' heads? I mean, how is that a steady job? Because if you break your foot, you won't be able to pay for food for at least 3 months. I wonder if the sign language translators ever hate the person who's speaking. They can just motion, it's some stupid person talking about nonsense, so you aren't really missing anything interesting. How are these people that easily amused? All she said was our college is located in the center of Chicago, so you aren't going to find a lot of trees and corn like you would in Iowa. What are you going to say next? Iowa doesn't have electricity or asphalt roads? At least in Iowa, we don't have any huge gang rivalries and Chicago deep dish pizza. I think we like our good health and not getting shot here. So sorry for having common sense, speaker lady who obviously didn't major in comedy. We already know you're dumb by your style of pizza. Who puts the sauce on top of the cheese? Obviously a group of very confused people who don't know how to make a pizza. You know what really burns my biscuits? The spell check on computer 14 in lab 281. I'm just gonna call you Lucifer so I can fully express my anger towards you, and because you're the devil. All I did was forget a hyphen between two words. I don't understand how that would make my whole paragraph wrong. I think something needs to be blown up or thrown down the stairs, Lucifer, because you aggravate me quite a bit. I bet you don't even have any recipes for biscuits, or even a picture of a biscuit for that matter. You also don't seem to have much intellect when it comes to the MLA format, and you probably had no clue what you read, because I believe the spell check said fragment consider revising. So I bet you don't even understand the English language. Maybe you don't have much control over your demon helper, the red arrow line. I'm just going to assume that all of the blame is going to go to the red demon line, which seems unfair. The job of the computer itself is to regulate what's being typed. It would seem as if you're lacking some schooling, Lucifer. Thankfully, laws against cruel and unusual punishment don't apply to machines. Computer 14, you are what really burns my biscuits. Do you have a life outside of school?
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't really know what outside of school is.
Oh, I do things like watch television, read books.
Yes, of course. I'm an active member of the Neighborhood Watch. So I sit on my roof and watch.
If you see a student outside of school, do you know their name, or is it just something you remember while at school?
I remember their name, Jim. I mean David.
No, I forget them everywhere, school and away from school.
I avoid all eye contact and sometimes I dive behind shrubs to hide from them.
No, I go out of my way to embarrass them, waving, making eye contact, letting them know I see them and I know what they're doing.
The truth is, we remember the louder students a little longer than we remember the quiet ones.
When there's a substitute teacher in the class, are you actually that teacher in disguise so you can spy on us?
Oh, that I could be. I trust them to tell me the truth.
I would say like 72% of the time.
No, I'd say when I can go, I just leave my substitute to do my dirty work.
No, I pose as an exchange student.
Do you eat, people food?
Mostly.
Yeah, probably too much. No, my diet consists mainly of nuts, bolts, and motor oil with the occasional treat of a stapler.
Yes, although I'm switching to organic macaroni and cheese, because Kraft macaroni and cheese puts weird yellow dye in theirs. It's been banned in 57 other countries.
Do you have a house, or do you live in the school?
I used to keep a cot here, but as I've gotten older, I really need a decent bed, so I go home to my house.
No, I sleep right here.
I live in my house. My 9th grade biology teacher lived in the school and got fired for it.
My biscuits. Everyone worrying about the polar bears going extinct. So I recently saw this commercial that had a polar bear and a floating iceberg that was trying to make you feel sorry for the polar bears. I'm sorry, but if the cameraman and speaker had all that time to film a polar bear and floating ice, then they're at fault for the polar bears going extinct. They could have saved that polar bear. Anyway, I would guess that commercial is most likely filmed in the zoo. Polar bears aren't even in the United States unless you count Alaska, so why should we care? Well, the polar bears are dying. That doesn't seem too bad. It's not like a lot of us live in the northern parts, because last time I checked, only crazy people lived in those parts of the world. All of these commercials seem to want money or something. Why? Is it going to be used to pay for cold weather? Yeah, you let me know if that works out. Are you going to bring all of the polar bears to the U.S.? Where will they be stored? In the homes of the PETA members? That would be stupid and dangerous. Polar bears eat people. What will happen if we do save the polar bears? They'll probably explode in population and invade America.
Sure, there's Canada in the way, but they won't put up much of a fight. Polar bears in Iowa, they'll eat all the corn, and soon they'll turn to pork and eat swifts. That would put half of Marshtown out of a job. Maybe all the polar bears should join the rest of the animal kingdom in the concept of adaptation, like we do every time the seasons change. But this might involve some help by having us shave the polar bears during the spring. Or they could learn to shed. My dog sheds, and he eats his own poop, so it can't be that hard. I think we should consider polar bears a dangerous threat to America, because they have the potential to kill us. So we should put them away in Cuba without trial. They're just never escaping the fact that they have to swim to survive. And that's what really burns my biscuits.
We'll be right back.